Hello, folks, and welcome to today's talk. Today we talk to Raheim Shabazz. He's an award-winning journalist and filmmaker. And today we spoke about the school-to-prison pipeline. We also added in a little talk about the prison industrial complex, but mainly we kept the conversation to the school-to-prisons pipeline. It was a very good interview, and he had some things to say about the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, for which he attended. And he's got some real good ideas on how we should move forward with regards to attacking and defeating the school to prison pipeline. And I think you should give this interview a good listen to. And should you want to get in touch with this good brother, Raheim Shabazz, I have his information at the end of the interview. So be sure and look out for that and reach out to him. He's a very good and deep brother, and he has a lot to offer. Thanks. And we're back. We are speaking to Raheim Shabazz, executive producer of the film Elementary Genocide. He's an award-winning journalist and also a filmmaker. How you doing, Raheim?
I'm okay. I'm doing very well. Yourself?
Very good, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us some of your very valuable time. Why don't you start the interview by speaking about your film, Elementary Genocide?
All right. Elementary Genocide is a documentary. It's called The School to Prison Pipeline. That's part one. And pretty much what it deals with the government and how they look at the third and fourth grade reading levels, and they're able to determine how many prisons they're going to build in the next 10 to 15 years. Because if you're not reading on the grade level, by the time you're in the fourth or fifth grade, there's an 85% chance that you're going to end up in jail. And that's with part one. Then we just recently put out part two, which is called Elementary Genocide 2, the Board of Education versus the Board of Incarceration. And what that does is it goes back to the beginning, the landmark ruling, Brown versus Board of Education, and it asks the proverbial question whether integration did us more harm than good.
Okay, now private prisons is a big business.
Absolutely.
Those who invest in them want to see the biggest return on investment. If you could, please speak about this and how it relates to modern day slavery.
Typically, when an inmate is locked up in jail, they're making anywhere from $1.10 a day. There's no 6 days. There's no workers' compensation, and pretty much you're there and you're there to work. A lot of corporations are using prison labor, such as Starbucks, Walmart, um, Whole Food, and a lot of these IBM, a lot of these 500 corporations, they allow prison laborers to work on their products, but you come out of jail and you have the skill set to assemble these projects, to work on it, and they won't hire you because you have a felony record. So it's the same thing as prison labor,
So the
remotely the same.
so the inmates that work for these companies or work on the products that these companies produce, they actually are taught the skill sets necessary to survive, say, once they're on the outside?
No, not at all. Um, as far as Whole Food, the cheese was being grown by inmates.
Okay.
Um, so that's how I was able to sell the different things like that. As far as managerial skills, how to be an entrepreneur, no, it's just manual labor. There's no skills, but you can work factory jobs, things like that. But you won't get hired because you have a felony.
Now, in your opinion, what can be done in order to fight against the schools to prison pipeline?
Well, we have to look at what causes the school to prison pipeline. A lot of it is zero tolerance. Just recently, I spoke to a mother whose son got written up because he wasn't wearing his socks properly. I, you know,
Wow.
that right there was like a mind blower. Like really, the socks. Um, and just little things, maybe wearing the wrong color. Another individual got suspended for their hair was a distraction for the design that they had it in. little things like that. And what it does is it starts with suspension, and 75% of those that are suspended eventually drops out of school, and that puts them on the road to the school to prison pipeline. Because when you're out of school, you're falling back in your grades, and we all know that idle time is the devil's workshop.
Yes.
But one of the important things is to keep in mind is that the parent is the child's first teacher, and the family and community is the school that they attend. So we have to keep in mind that school starts long before the 8 o'clock bell in the morning, and it doesn't end at 3 p.m. So parents have to be more proactive. They need to be on the PTA, get involved in the PTA meetings. And then once you're involved in that, then you need to elect the school board from the parents. You know, the ones that's more dynamic and that understands it, they should be elected to the school board. And the school board, in return, is the one that hires the superintendent, who in return hires the principals in that district. So what you do is you take control of your school neighborhood by neighborhood, city by city, state by state. And this is something that can be done organically. It's something that's tangible, and you can see the results. And another thing that we can do is that we can homeschool. You know, statistics tell us that there's virtually no school to prison pipeline for kids that are homeschooled. And a lot of people, especially in Western culture, both parents is working. A lot of households are single parents. So you may think that you don't have the time. But I know here in the state of Atlanta that you do it 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, and you get to pick the hours that you want to do. There's no determined set hours. And you know, to start out, you only have to have a high school diploma, and every 3 years when they take a test, you have them go to a specialist and someone that's verified and certified, and they can sit there and take the test in front of them. In Seattle and in Portland, states like that, they even pay parents to homeschool their kids. So we need to look at alternatives. We need to look at what they did in those states and just mimic it around the country. That's another thing that we can do to stop the school to prison pipeline. And also, we need to teach them from an Afrocentric perspective, because the workforce right now in the public school system is over 75% white, and it's predominantly females. And when you have individuals that don't have your best interests at heart, that's teaching your children, then it's not going to work out. Malcolm X, he said that we're the only group of people that allow our oppressors to teach our children, and we have to stop that. John Henry Clark, he told us, this was over 30 years ago, he said the same people that will have you believe that we are one chromosome away from being a farm animal is now teaching our kids. So we know from recent stories in the news that a lot of these teachers are racist, and they're not teaching our history. They're still teaching Columbus discovered America. And when they don't see the greatness of themselves and they're not reflected, their history, the greatness of their history is not reflected in the curriculum, then the kids get bored, they drop out of school, and then it's not a necessity for them. We have to start teaching from the right side of the brain. The right side deals with artistic and creativity, as opposed to the linear thinking, which is primarily teaching in Western culture.
We're speaking with Raheim Shabazz, executive producer of the film Elementary Genocide. He's also an award-winning journalist and filmmaker, and has given us some of his very valuable time today. Raheim, I really like the point that you made, saying that parents are the first teachers. I would totally agree that that is definitely a place where we need to start in order to combat the school to prison pipeline. And I tell you, the homeschooled idea, I used to frown upon that, for a lot of years. But I tell you the truth, I think it's a very good and increasingly good option that we need to employ. We need to look at it even more because, and to your point, these kids are not really being taught by a lot of staff that really care about them. Okay, and I'm really glad you brought that point to light. Now, I want to ask you a real quick question about the prison industrial complex.
Okay.
In your opinion, why is there a need for the prison industrial complex in the first place?
Well, it all goes back to money. It's a big business. When you look at it, you have two companies, and one of them is called Correction Corporation of America, and the other one's called GEO.
Mm-hmm.
And their motto is, if we build it, they will come.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that it costs anywhere in a city college, it would cost anywhere from $14,000 to $17,000 to go to a city college. And I know in New York it costs over $100,000 to imprison one inmate for a year on Rikers Island. So it costs more to imprison an inmate for a price that you would send a kid to an Ivy League college for 4 years. So it's all about money. You have the court system, you have the judges that get paid, the correction officer, the arrested officer. So it's an institution that's built on profit. So there is no longer a need for rehabilitation. There's no longer a need for corrections or none of that because they want a recidivism rate. They want to come back and come back and come back. The Correction Corporation of America sent out a proposal to every state, and pretty much what they were saying was that we can run your prison at a third of the price
Mm-hmm.
if you can guarantee us a 90% occupancy rate. And it was a big firestorm over this. A lot of the states didn't do it, but there was a few that did. And what they did do is that they entered into a contractual agreement saying that they would maintain a 90% occupancy rate. And how can you guarantee that when crime is down unless you're going to be arbitrarily locking people up? So when these states and these particular prisons was not able to meet that quota, then what the private prison corporation did was sue the state because you made an agreement saying that, that we have this amount of occupancy, so now you owe us money. So at the end of the day, it's all about money.
I'm trying to want to ask the next question, but I want to stick to this point too because you brought up a very strong point that it's all about the money. And indeed, I do believe that it's all about the money. I believe that we need more of an investment in urban schools, i.e., the 21st century skill sets. Teaching students, urban students, 21st century skill sets. What's your opinion about this?
Absolutely. We definitely need to teach things that are relevant to today, such as coding, IT work, and, the landscape of everything right now is computer.
Yes.
So we need to be on the forefront of that movement, and that's not being done. They have schools that still have outdated textbooks, let alone what's computers. So
Sure.
I think an investment in school needs to be, with technology and where the workforce is going right now.
We just celebrated the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. What are your hopes? Or actually, what do you hope will come out of this movement?
Well, I went to the march. I wasn't privy to go in 1995. One thing that I can say, it was a unified effort. A lot of people showed up, and I think it was a sign of the time that people was fed up, and it was all about the theme of the march, justice or else.
Mm-hmm.
I think marching and rallying, it has its points, but I think it already served its purpose. John Henry Clark, he said the only thing that marching does is wear out a good soul of shoes. And I think that you have to fight fire with fire at certain times. And this is a day and time where that is most necessary. And I think until white America has a pearl clutching moment and they're feeling the same pain, just as Minister Farrakhan said, we need to redistribute the pain. And it doesn't always have to be physical. It can be with a boycott. I think that's substantial. That's the first. That's the first thing we need to do. They need to respect our economic power, and I think some of these killings will stop. It has to stop, and I think more people need to get on, get on the board and see that, it's not so much as a color thing, but it's an economic thing.
Yeah.
Those that are in low serving communities are the ones that's being the blunt of what's going on. And it can happen to anybody, and a lot of people don't get actively involved until it happens to them. It was one of the Panthers, I forget when they asked him why did he join the movement. He said he didn't join the movement, he got beaten into the movement. And it shouldn't take for that to happen to someone, for someone to get actively involved. Because these are your brothers, these are your sisters, we all related. And right now, black people are catching the blunt of what's happening as far as violence and police brutality.
We're speaking with Raheim Shabazz, executive producer of the film Elementary Genocide. He's an award-winning journalist as well as a filmmaker, and he's given us some of his very valuable time today. Raheim, I believe that we need more African-American women, more as well as other minority representation in the courts or politics, etc. If this were to happen, how would it affect the school to prison pipeline, in your opinion?
I don't think it will have a great effect. And the reason why I say that is because here in Atlanta, Clayton County, Fulton County, we have predominantly black judges, black prosecutors, and we have one of the worst records of the school to prison pipeline.
Wow.
And it's almost as if, now the slaves are running the plantation. You have to change the system. Like you can't, most people, they talk about changing racism and white supremacy, and they don't think about changing the system. The mindset exists because the system is there. You destroy the system and then you destroy their mindset. And that's what you have to do, because if not, then all you're going to have is black faces in high places that are doing nothing but collecting a paycheck because they're part of the system. And we know that they don't go against the system. You have the blue wall of silence when it comes to the police department, and the same thing with the prosecutors. A lot of people now, due to DNA, are being found not guilty of crimes that was committed 10, 20 years ago. After they served the time, they let them out of jail, and they may give them a compensation package. But the prosecutor never goes to jail. The arresting officer that probably planted the evidence never goes to jail. And until they start going to jail and they know that they could be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, is not going to stop. So I think having more black judges, more black DAs, more black police officers is a help in the right direction, but I don't expect to see no substantial change if they're still going to work for the same system.
In your travels, and as you speak to people about the school to prison pipeline, what are you finding regarding people's reactions and their opinions?
Well, initially, when I put out the documentary, a lot of people was like, "Nah, this can't be happening. It's an urban myth." And, but when I go around and travel and I hear other people's stories and people are able to relate to what I'm saying, they know it exists. They want to find out what can they do to combat the school to prison pipeline. And a lot of people is upset and they're ready for change.
We have been speaking with Raheim Shabazz, executive producer of the film Elementary Genocide. He's an award-winning journalist as well as an award-winning filmmaker. Raheim, please feel free to plug any project that you are involved in, your website, etc.
Okay, anybody that's interested in learning more about elementary genocide, the documentary, when we have our next screening, future projects can go to www.elementarygenocide.com. You also interact with me on social media. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and it's at Raheim Shabazz.
At Raheim Shabazz.
Shabazz.
Okay.
First name, last name.